It's a Tuesday, the 5th of January 2021, and of course we have a whole lot of grounds to cover. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Temple Ashaju, we appreciate your time coming through on the program. Temple is a research analyst. He's also a business and financial markets journalist, as well as a show producer with us here on Frontier Africa Reports. Ali Khan Sacho, who is the CEO and founder of Rich Frontiers Management in Nairobi. Thank you, Ali. We appreciate your time every day coming on the program. And Onyeka Ejema, representing Vectiva Capital Management, one of the investment securities firm licensed by the SEC and the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Thank you, three of you. We appreciate your time. Not a very particular bad day to start the first day of the year. It looks like many of the African bourses started in the positive territory. If you take a sample of South Africa, Nigeria, Ivory Coast, but the Egyptian and the Kenyan market softened. By the way, a few more green shoots in emerging markets and frontier markets with the rest of the world, despite the fact that the US New York Stock Exchange, the Dow, finished about 400 points lower on later in the evening on Monday. But again, it was not a very bad way to start the first full trading day of the new year. For the East African market, yes, the Treasury is looking to raise 75 billion shillings in January in Treasury bonds. The various auctions, I'm sure, will be getting started this week. The tea farmers in Kenya are complaining that the minimum tax will cost tea farmers about 745 million shillings. I'm sure Ali will be thinking of that. But again, Ethiopia looks like it's locking itself into the extractive industry. 22 mining sites and 5 petroleum sites. It looks like this Prime Minister Abiy's country is going fast and furious within the mineral resources space. And innovation, yes, fintech subsidiary created by Stanbic Uganda. That is all part of the whole opening up of financial inclusion and getting the payment system better within the East African region, getting into that game that is already running across the continent. Let's start with Ethiopia. Ali, raise the curtain for us here. What's Prime Minister Abiy up to?
So obviously we've got a tremendous amount of political uncertainty with the situation still unresolved in the Tigray province, and reports which indicate that the problem is far bigger than the Ethiopian government's narrative is spinning. And also, I was just looking at the currency. The Ethiopian currency is at 40 to the dollar. It probably is the biggest no-brainer sale of any currency on the African continent. I expect it to weaken substantially because I think the political issue is pretty intractable. With respect to Ethiopia opening up 22 mining and 5 petroleum sites for investors, the political situation is creating a much more, a bigger impulse for the Ethiopian government to open up the economy. And that's why you're seeing, these sites being open for investors. The issue will be whether investors are comfortable with the political risk in Ethiopia. Mining and petroleum are extractive industries. As we know, the extractive industries have a much higher tolerance for political risk than other investors like manufacturing and so forth. So this is probably a clever way of messaging the markets that Ethiopia is open for business, notwithstanding the current uncertainty that Ethiopia is facing. But make no mistake, Ethiopia is under a tremendous political issue here, and the government's narrative has got holes in it as big as Swiss cheese. So we've got to look at this carefully. And as I said, if I was a foreign exchange trader, I would be selling as many of the Ethiopian currency as I could. Kenya Treasury looking to raise 75 billion shillings in January 2021 via the issue of T-bonds. As you know, Kenya is running a large deficit at the moment. There is a very big gap here, 75 billion, it's about $700 million. They're better off, frankly, raising in Kenya shillings at the moment. The central bank has brought rates lower. Inflation is ticking higher. but the banks have appetite for government paper. The demand for borrowing is not that high in the private sector, and therefore the banks continue to be net buyers of these bonds. So it will be interesting to see the rate and the subscription that we achieve in that. The issue around the debt is becoming quite problematical. They've gone to the IMF, and the IMF are looking at that in this first quarter of this year. Yeah. This minimum tax is a huge issue, Boyason. I mean, what the government has done is introduced a 1% turnover tax. So it's in addition to income tax. It's irrelevant whether you're making a profit or a loss. And it speaks to, I think, a knee-jerk response by the policymakers to the funding gap. And it's going to hit these small tea farmers pretty badly. And there's a lot of pushback now coming about the turnover tax. I think it's ill-advised. The amount they're talking that they're going to collect is not sufficient. They're obviously trying to widen the tax net, but I don't think this is the appropriate way of going about it. So let's see how that develops. Stanbic Uganda establishing fintech subs. Fintech is really red hot these days in Africa, as you know. It's all being driven by the mobile phone, and Stanbic obviously has a significant presence across the continent. And I think, they're rolling out various efforts, and this is interesting to see. It speaks to the level of innovation that Standard Bank possesses.
Yes, I also like to understand the 1% tax that the authorities in Kenya was introducing. Whether you make profit or not, you just got a flat 1% tax on your business. I'm sure it's going to be a whole lot of hues and cries as well if that is done in Nigeria, isn't it, Onyeka?
So basically, minimum tax rates.
Yes.
And so yeah, we have something similar in Nigeria. We do have a minimum tax. However, the new finance bill, which is set to, should kick in this year, is set to exclude some smaller sized businesses from paying minimum taxes. From paying minimum tax, which is very important in this harsh economic climate that we currently find ourselves. We know that a minimum tax regime is very important for countries to help mitigate the impact of tax avoidance abuse, as as spelled out during the general agreement on trade tariffs or tariffs and trades. So it is quite important, but it does have some sort of impact on smaller sized businesses. In Nigeria, however, it's impressive to see that we've started to take note of how it impacts smaller businesses and made some adjustments to that.
Well, let's get a wider view of the Nigerian West Africa space. When we look at I know the OPEC meeting is in everyone's crosshairs today. They failed yesterday to agree on the extra 500,000 barrels per day. Nigeria decided to vote alongside Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Malaysia, Kuwait, Oman, UAE, Algeria to roll over the existing production quota. It looks like Nigeria wants extra dollar on the barrel rather than increase production. The central bank total treasury bills for last year was 62% down from the previous year. We all understand that size. It's good for the government, borrow lower and get the yield at a very much lower level. So a whole lot of folks are departing UPDC. That's the subsidiary, real estate subsidiary of UACN. There's a new acting CEO, 2 new non-executive directors, the chairman, the CEO are departing on the back of the UACN selling off majority shareholding in UPDC to custodian investment. The insurance companies in Ghana are now going to have the deadline for their recapitalization by January 2022. A court suspended Nigeria's own insurance consolidation towards the end of last year, around Christmas. Now Ghana has voluntarily moved their own finishing line by 6 months. And West African rating agency WARA has confirmed Senegal's Senelec's rating at that level. So let me just get a few thoughts from Temple Ashaju on this particular story around the Nigeria's market with UPDC changing board of guards. It looks like a whole lot of change of guards happening. Fidelity Bank has a new CEO, the first female ever for the bank. It looks like this year is a whole lot of a change on board going to happen.
Absolutely, boss. And these are plans that have been in the works all the way through 2020, some of them before 2020. Some started late 2019. I recall that of UPDC started late 2019. And all through 2020, we had so much of a rally on UAC stocks and UPDC stocks at some point, because as you explained earlier, there was a bit of load shedding from the UAC stake in UPDC. So all that now seems to have been consummated. You would have seen some cross dealings at some point, and that's what took place on UPDC stocks. That's why we saw the departure of the chairman and of course some other executive directors. Now we have new acting CEO and all of that. They are not the only company that have done that. Quite a number of other companies in the stock exchange and in Nigeria, listed on the Nigerian stock exchange, have done the same thing across the regions in Africa. I mean, I recall someone here recently, an investment manager, was actually mentioning something also happening with a company that I can't really recall now in South Africa. So these are things really happening. Of course, we know it's not all far-fetched from the pandemics, the COVID-19 pandemic and more. Of course, you mentioned Ghana insurance recapitalization as well, which has now been given a deadline of January 2022. It means these investors now have 1 year to go. But for us in Nigeria, of course, we have the cost that has now waded in, and of course, it's good to know that NICOM, the regulator, is complying with that. I mean, that shows some rule of law to an extent, and it will give some kind of investment confidence for investors.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Temple. Onyeka, why do you think Nigeria decided to vote on rollover of existing quota rather than supporting additional 500,000 barrels per day into the market?
Yeah, you think that Nigeria would want the cuts reduced and production quotas increased by 500,000 barrels a day. However, according to Mohamed Bakindo, the downside risks, there are fresh downside risks to all oil prices now, and now is not the time to be raising to raise crude supply. I think the only countries that were pushing for the increase in supply were Russia and United Arab Emirates. Almost all the other OPEC members were in agreement that they should hold off for now and watch how the new wave of lockdowns would impact crude prices. In the near term. I do think that this issue is going to remain on the table at the next JTC meeting, and if it doesn't happen, then it will still be on the table at the next JTC meeting. Commodity producers, especially those who are very dependent on crude receipts, are very desperate to increase their foreign exchange earnings right now. I mean, look at the case of Nigeria, and so this issue is not going away. What they're saying right now is let's just take a breather and see how this new wave of lockdowns impacts crude prices at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Onyeka. Ali, do you think the OPEC folks were a little bit optimistic and a little bit exuberant in December when they decided they were going to be doing additional 500,000 barrels to the markets, bringing it all down to 2.2 million barrels per day? Looks like between December and now, the reality has the clock clicked in, and now they are caught in the middle.
Absolutely. I think there was way too much optimism in that December meeting. I think Nigeria has shown sophisticated thinking, because really it's a question of supply and price, right? If you will probably get a higher price with less supply, you're better off. Instead of tipping it into surplus and then sending it into a possible downward spiral, because you know how sensitive oil prices are to supply and demand. So I think that was absolutely the right decision on Nigeria's part. My concern really is in this first half of the year that we've been way too optimistic about demand. You've just heard the news out of Boris Johnson that's going to lock down the United Kingdom until February. It looks as if this new variant is much more transmissive. So, of course, we've got the vaccine, but the vaccine is being rolled out not at warp speed, but at snail's pace if you look at the numbers that are announced every day. So I think it's the right decision by OPEC. They've got to manage the supply side more than anything in order to keep the price around here. I think most oil producers will take it away as a pretty good deal. So, yes.
I agree with you. I think they were a little bit too optimistic towards the end of last year, hoping that the second wave was not going to be as virulent as it is right now. But now it looks like but I think they will have to find a way out today. 3:30 in the afternoon today. We'll wait to see what the outlook will be. We'll wait for their communique from Vienna. Let's touch on Southern African markets, shall we? With South Africa's stock market yesterday roaring alongside other emerging markets. The dollar tumble continued. Dollar index this morning still below the 90 reading, down by about 0.2%. Sasol is still looking for money left, right, and center. So it's completed 50% stake in that U.S. joint venture, 5.9 billion rand to pay down on some of its debt. That will not clean up the books for Sasol, but at least give it a bit of a breather. Botswana government yesterday decided to roll out the forecast for the currency, the Pula, for the year to decline 2.87 against the dollar, a little bit higher than 1.5% or so in 2020. And Angola is set for the fourth review of its EFF. That's the extended fund facility with the IMF. That's next week, January the 11th. So, Temple, how do you think the story for Botswana will play when you talk about currency? This is the government coming through the front door, setting a band or the rate at which they want the currency to decline, whereas we're still here in Nigeria trying to battle how we play up both the upside and the downside through the central bank intervention.
Well, every country has got its challenges at this point. We know that Nigeria, that you mentioned, ours is more of the forex, and of course we know that crude oil is our mainstay. You talked about this, the Botswana thing, expecting that Pula is going to be losing some 2.87% to the dollar. These are projections, of course, from analysts, economists, and all of them. This is 2021. It is new. Everyone is coming out with their outlook at this point in time. So, but the economic realities, by the time they start setting in, we will know what direction to follow. And of course, you start seeing policies of government, going in that direction as well. I mean, here in the UK as well, there's been the lockdown news that came out yesterday has got investors all rattling again. Before now, everyone's been ditching the US dollar for euro, for the Australian dollar, the New Zealand dollar, and of course, the dollar has been dipping. Now, we also had the pounds, folks were reacting to that. So now that the lockdown has been announced again, we're going to see another turnaround in the market. I mean, I was just looking at an analytical report coming from TradePro, Investing 101, and it is expected that there will be a decline in the pounds today. Even though some other people are saying, I mean, the UK seems to have been in lockdown since March 2020, and it looks like it hasn't been abated at all. So there may not be so much of a decline. But so all I'm trying to say is that currency at this point in time is the in thing. It is where governments and of course economists and analysts currently have their focus. So we're going to continue to see different projections and outlook releases all across the world until the coronavirus simmers.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Ali, I'm sure you set your eye on the Angola's fourth review with the IMF for next week.
I think the IMF have been very engaged and invested in Angola, and they've been trying to get more clarity on the lending book, the Chinese lending book to Angola. There's been some delay as they demanded more transparency on that. But overall, I think the IMF will support this fourth review. I think there is a significant investment in President Dos Santos to try and reverse some of the egregious problems that they encountered during the President Lourenço, the previous problems they encountered during the time of the Dos Santos regime. So I expect Angola to be supported. Of course, debt to GDP is projected at around 120%. There are issues there, but overall, this is a rich country. And as long as they go through with their divestment program that they've been speaking about, and if oil can hold around these sorts of levels, I think Angola has a pathway. It's going to take, I think, 36 to 48 months. But I think you can restructure that economy and get it back on a growth path. Just to touch on your main headline, emerging markets roaring in 2021 as the dollar stumbles. As you know, yesterday, the JP Morgan Emerging Market Currency Index, I think, hit a multi-year high. But then I was looking at notwithstanding the dollar index being below 90, I saw some of the rand, the Brazilian real, this morning were being sold and people were booking profits, a little bit of weakness creeping in. So it'll be interesting to watch, that and see how that plays out. But, emerging market currencies have rallied sharply in the fourth quarter, with the rand below 15. The South African Central Bank, for example, might not be keen to see it rally much further than here, and might themselves be the ones on the sell side at these highs.
Take the currency to the Nigerian market. Yesterday, the Naira gained about 3.4% or thereabouts on the US dollar, the I&E window. Onyeka, what's the outlook on the market there from Vetiva Capital?
Yeah, so the outlook hasn't really changed. The outlook for the Naira against the US dollar has not really changed. We still have, significant currency depreciation risk. We see that looking at the market, the US market yesterday, we saw a lot of profit taking in the market yesterday. We saw that a lot of investors had started to pull, some of their funds from the US market yesterday, especially taking out profits that they had gained in the market over 2020, and we think that that's one of the main reasons that we saw the US dollar weaken yesterday. And so it was more a case of a mild depreciation in the US dollar rather than an appreciation of the Nigerian Naira. The depreciation risk in the Naira has not changed significantly. We're still going to be facing slow economic growth challenges, and nothing much has changed on the Nigerian front. We still expect a mild depreciation in 2021. Sorry, I keep saying 2020.
We'll get used to it. We'll get used to it. But today is the first meeting. Today is the first meeting of the GCC, and of course Egypt is one of the big players, one member. So President Al-Sisi hasn't confirmed if he's attending. With the Saudi Arabia yesterday reopening its land and air border with Qatar, it looks like there's a whole lot of rapprochement, as it were, within the Sahel and the Middle East. Ali?
Yes, I think that announcement by Saudi Arabia regarding Qatar is a signal in the noise. It's a signal that Trump is going, Biden is coming in, and this very adversarial approach is not going to resonate with the Biden administration like it resonated with Trump and his son-in-law and whatever other personal interests they had in the game. So, it's worth watching. But we still have this division between Qatar, Turkey on one side, Saudi, UAE, Egypt on the other. There, and it'll be interesting to see whether there's a rapprochement amongst all those parties, but I don't think that's likely at this point in time. And just to touch on your Morocco story, the wind farm, 270 megawatts. You know, Morocco is doing a lot in this renewable energy space, the solar side. They're really putting in first-class infrastructure. When you look at the trains and you compare them to the trains that we have got here and in Ethiopia, you're talking about Formula 1 and Formula 5 or something. Really very interesting developments. And that Moroccan economy, I think, is really going to outperform once we return to growth in the future.
Yes. Thank you very much, Ali, for taking on one or two of the big stories within the North African space. Again, between Egypt and Morocco, it's like both of them are trying to outdo each other when it comes to oil and gas, electricity, energy. It's just a whole hub. What's going on over there? Thank you so much, my panelists this morning. Ali Kansachi, thank you so much from Nairobi. Onyeka Ijoma, thank you very much for coming through on the show this morning from Vertiva Capital. And Temple Ashaju, it's good to have you also on the show. Gentlemen, have a great Tuesday and see you back on the show tomorrow morning. We appreciate your time. Bye for now.